In our parasha, we learn of the story of Jacob. Jacob leaves home. He has nothing. He comes to the home of his father-in-law Lavan. There he meets Rachel, falls in love, and he marries ultimately Rachel and also Leah, and he produces a large family. He also produces a great deal of wealth, mostly in livestock. But throughout this period of over 20 years, he lives a very difficult life. Lavan, his father-in-law, swindles him and cheats him at every opportunity. And there comes a time where he feels he has to go back home. He must go back to his parents, Yitzchak and Rivka, and he must continue with the legacy of the Jewish people. However, it's not going to be easy to just leave the house of Lavan. It's not something that he can do quickly, although he has to escape. And he decides on a plan of leaving Lavan's home. So he calls his wives, Rachel and Leah, to the field, and he discusses the matter with them. And he says, look, your father is not treating me the way that he used to. Things have got even worse, and we have to go. And they agree to the plan, and ultimately they flee. Our sages ask, why is it that when Yaakov consulted with his wives, Rachel and Leah, he said to them, come out to me to the field? Why did he consult with them in the field? And the Talmud tells us a beautiful insight, that we learn such an important lesson from this. And in fact, this was something that was done in ancient times in certain Jewish communities, that whenever people would consult about something that was very, very sensitive, they would go out into the field. Why? Because there's nobody else around. There are no listening ears. As we say, the wall has ears. There are no little birds around, and therefore the conversation can remain as private as possible. And the Talmud gives us a very interesting illustration and a story about this topic. We are told about Herod, the great king, who built the second temple and so many other incredible buildings in ancient Israel. But in fact, Herod was a very wicked person. He killed many of his own family members because he was jealous of them, and he believed that they were trying to usurp his position. And most of all, he hated the sages, because he knew that according to his lineage, he was not really meant to be the king of Israel. He was not from the Davidic line. And he knew that the sages were against him being king. And in a fit of rage, he killed all of the sages that were in Jerusalem, except for one, whose name was Bava ben Butta. And he left Bava ben Butta alive to be an advisor, but he took out his eyes. He made him blind. One day, Herod decided to play a very evil trick on Bava ben Butta. And he comes to him. Of course, the aged sage cannot see. Herod disguises his voice, and he says to the aged sage, you know, I've heard about this crazy King Herod. Have you heard about all of the terrible things that he's done? It's just crazy. It's just bizarre. And the sage says to him, well, you know, I can't say anything because the Torah tells us that one may not curse a leader, a king. So Herod says back, yes, but he's not really a king. So Bava ben Butta says, well, even if he's not a king, even if he's just a very wealthy, powerful person, still the Torah says you cannot curse a wealthy, powerful person. So then he says to him, well, what difference does it make? It's just me here and you here. So curse him. Nobody will know. And again, the rabbi said, no, it's not true. Because we are told by King Solomon that a little bird will take the voice and tell other people. And that the walls have ears. I'm not going to say anything whatsoever. And at that moment, Herod realized his terrible mistake. He realized how sensitive the sages were. That this man, Bava ben Butta, who had been abused by Herod, who had been blinded by Herod, who had all of his colleagues killed by Herod, would still not say any type of slander or gossip against him, because ultimately it could get back to him and cause problems. Herod then made himself known to Bava ben Butta. He identified himself as I am Herod. And I want to do some form of penitence, of teshuvah. And Bava ben Butta said, well, what you can do is that the temple is in disarray, perhaps you can fix it. And so the story went that Herod completed and renovated the temple in a most beautiful way. But the point of the story is to tell us just how sensitive and careful we have to be when it comes to discussing sensitive matters. Go out into the fields. Go somewhere where nobody's going to hear you, because it can always get back to you and cause you a great deal of trouble. If that lesson was true in the times of the sages and in the times of Yaakov and his wives, it is more true today than any other time in history because of social media. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have YouTube, we have all of these methodologies. You put one post or one nasty word on any of these social media, it can go viral to the entire world, and you can never take it back. It's done, and it can come back to you in the most terrible way. And perhaps to conclude with that famous story, it's an apocryphal story told about the Chofetz Chaim, that a man came to the Chofetz Chaim in his little hamlet in Lithuania, and he said to him, Rabbi, I've spoken Lashon Hora, I've slandered, I've gossiped against this one, against that one. What should I do? How can I do teshuvah? How can I repent? And the Chofetz Chaim said to him, please come and bring me a feather cushion. So the man brought a feather cushion. The Chofetz Chaim said to him, cut it open, and now shake it out. Shake the feathers into the wind and let the feathers disperse, which is exactly what he did. And then he said to the aged sage, well, what should I do now? And the Chofetz Chaim says, go and gather all of the feathers. He said, it's impossible. They've been taken everywhere by the wind. I'll never collect them. He says, well, that's the problem with Lashon Hora. Once you've opened Pandora's box, it's out there and you can never retract it. So be careful. And if you need to consult, do it like Yaakov did, in the field, away from prying ears. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.